Hi, welcome to week 4 of the Summer Confidence Challenge. I hope you're enjoying the challenge, but more importantly, I hope that you're noticing that your child is stepping into the space where we're stepping back. So the idea is that you take each theme and you keep that one and then you build on it with the next theme. And week 4's theme is all about internal validation. So this internal validation is one of the strongest foundations of confidence that children can take through life with them. And now I already know that you're lovely parents because you're here doing this challenge to try and help your child, right? But ultimately, we unfortunately can't talk our children into confidence. We can't just persuade them with our words that they are brilliant and they are great at stuff and they can handle challenges, because if that worked, they'd all be super confident and have no anxiety and no fears and no worries now, right? And what's more, children who do rely on external validation, that validation that comes from us or teachers or friends, tend to have confidence that rises and falls based on the feedback that they're getting from those around them. So the idea for this week is to help them along their way to notice for themselves and to put greater stock in their own thoughts and their own opinions than the ones of those around them. So the core theme is that confidence grows when children learn and recognize for themselves how they are growing and what their own skills are and how competent they are, rather than being told by us, and almost transferring that validation, that positive feedback from us to them. So the way that we're going to do it this week, there's a running theme through a lot of this content, is again through questions, but questions with specific focus this week. So I'm going to give you 6 different areas, and these will be in your PDF, so you don't need to remember them. 6 different ways to build that internal validation, that positive feedback from themselves rather than us. And we're going to do questions to do that. Now, these 6 different areas to use questions in, these can and should apply both to doing general things like, a piece of art or putting their shoes on or things about competence, but also when talking about things in terms of things that they're a bit nervous of or ways that they've shown bravery in terms of actual worries, fears and anxiety. So in that context, it might be talking about the tasks that they've been doing about being independent and where you step back and encourage them to go to cubicles by themselves or order ice cream or interact and pay for things out in public, for example. So the first area to use questions for is to help them to notice and recognize their own successes instead of us telling them. So it might be a general thing like a piece of art, or it might be about going into a cubicle while out in public. So it's using questions to get them to notice that they have been successful. Which part of this piece of art do you like the best? Instead of saying, I love your art, this bit's amazing. Now we can also say those things, but we want to add in these questions of, which bit do you like? What part did you enjoy doing the most? What thing have you been really successful at today? And how do you feel about that? The next area is to help them not just recognize successes, but strengths. That's like core strengths that they've used, maybe perseverance, continuing when things got tough, or having a go, or trying a new thing, and asking questions about that, like, what tricky thing did you have a go at today and how did that go for you? So what you're asking their brain to do is recognize and take this evidence of, oh, I'm able to do these things, or at least have a go, and that's where it all starts. Number 3, using questions to help them recognize progress. Though this isn't perfection, because perfect doesn't exist anyway, right? But in terms of art, but also overcoming anxiety, what are you able to do now that you couldn't do before? What's easier for you now, which wasn't easy before? And so instead of giving them that feedback ourselves, hey, look, you did this and this used to be really tricky for you, we're going to ask them to recognize it. Number 4, we're going to use questions to help them recognize that maybe they're able to solve their own problems. And that might be, again, like something to do with a puzzle or cooking, a practical task, but also something that they're worried about, and that might be the new school year or changing to a new school, for example. So instead of answering for them, well, this is what you can do, why don't you do this, I'm going to ask them, what's a time when you've dealt with something similar, or what are some of your ideas that might be helpful here? And building on that, number 5 is to help them remember and collect in their brain as evidence previous successes. What did you do that was like this before? Do you remember that used to be tricky, and what skills did you use to develop in that area? And then number 6, which is a concept that we will explore a little bit more in next week's theme as well, is to use questions to almost transfer reassurance. This generally is around anxiety and worries, for example, about the new school year. Instead of just answering with our own thoughts and opinions, we're going to use questions to encourage them to reflect on how they feel. Instead of us telling them, you're going to be fine, it's going to be all right, we're going to ask them, how does it feel? What might be helpful in these situations? And how do you know that you're going to be able to handle this? So to summarize, we're talking about transferring over external validation towards internal validation, a key concept in inner confidence, which ultimately is what we're trying to build here. So we're going to use questions so that instead of us giving feedback, we're going to ask them questions that encourage them to notice the pieces of evidence themselves instead of us giving it to them. In your PDF, you'll find the 6 themes to use questions around and examples of those, and of course, with your own ideas. I'll see you next week.